Hey Stephanie, how are you? Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm doing very well. What about you?
I'm doing well too, given the circumstances, yes. So I'm
Mhm.
talking today because I want to hear about the work that you've been doing with your coaching practice. We were trained together with Jen Lara and Sue Welsamede in through the Anne Arundel Community College program. And since we were trained, you have started a coaching practice. So tell me about this practice that you've started.
So it's a single woman operation. It's me. And I really started doing it last June because I was going to be applying for ICF certification. And one of the things you have to do is track your hours. And so I thought that that would be a really good way to also help me gain hours. So I just started reaching out informally through social media to friends and through a couple other apps. And I've really found sort of a specific niche that I'm working with. It tends to be women that are between like 35 and 50, and they're going through some sort of transformation in
Mm.
their lives. And that's really where I am finding a lot of people that are wanting to talk to me. And so I see it as a gift, especially of connecting with people in times of stress. And so I am continuing networking, and I'm trying to start up partnerships with complementary businesses because I think coaching can be infused into so many arenas in life that I'm really for me it's also very creative. It's opened up a creative outlet for myself. So it's been wonderful bringing these gifts to people.
Hmm. What I'm hearing, Steph, is two things. The intentionality for you behind doing this work, and also that the women that you coach, are realizing that they need an intentionality in what it is they're doing. They're realizing something's missing, and your coaching
Yeah.
practice brings that to them.
Yes.
I think what's really cool about that is that, that's what Ripple Out is all about. It's the idea of intentional leadership for women, that there's so many things that can stop us, either real or sort of self-created. And you're being very focused and, like I said before, and intentional about that.
Yeah.
What values are you honoring by doing this work?
Um, until I found coaching, I always kept, and people would say, what's next in your career? What's next in your life? And the answer was, I don't know. I haven't found it yet. But when I found coaching, I found my next step because it was such a natural complement of skills to my personality. And so it allowed to live my core value of speaking your truth, which has always been really important to me, like living authentically. And coaching allowed me to access some skills to bring that to others. I also am very big on owning responsibility. And for me, the intentionality comes in that if you're engaging in acts, you have to take responsibility for them. I don't care if they're good or bad,
Mm.
but because we all make mistakes and we're all going to have problems. But the hiding your head in the sand was always really difficult for me in my personal life. And through coaching,
Mm.
it's allowed me to own my own stuff, from my past, and my future self will hopefully learn from it. But also, a lot of times, coaching brings out for my clients why they're doing something. And that's part of where responsibility comes. Because if you can identify the why,
Mm.
you're finding the root of the iceberg. You're finding the root cause behind things. And that's really, for me, important.
So what I'm hearing too here is that coaching is giving you the opportunity to support people in understanding their why. And then the next step is, if this is their why and is so strong for them and so deeply felt, what is stopping them from actually being able to take that next step and what it is they want to do?
And what I find sometimes that's interesting that you talked about is sometimes it's not the starting of an action, it's the stopping of an action. That
Mm.
they are almost self-sabotaging sometimes, or they're allowing others in undue influence. So before they can start the next step, they need to identify what to stop. And a lot of my
Mm.
coaching has revealed that inaction is actually action, that intentionally putting up barriers and saying no or defining something is as critical as springing into action. And I found that in my clients is a huge gender difference in that
Mm.
there's a lot of time once the women know, or once my clients in particular know what needs to stop, they don't become brazen, but they almost become extremely empowered because they have a language around which to address something.
I love that you say that, use the word language, Steph, because that's what I've realized with the Women in Leadership framework that I created, is that it is a language. It gives women a language for naming and owning the leadership experiences that they've had and that they want to have. And it gives them a structure for understanding what's stopped them and what's gotten in their way. Because, I mean, like I said to you when we were talking before, it's like leadership for us, or living as a woman in the world, often it's like we want a solid path, but it's more like quicksand. And we've normalized this walking on quicksand. And once we can say, hey, I'm walking on quicksand, and these are the things that are making it quicksand for me, we can actually become more intentional in what it is we want to do. So I'm curious then, what belief systems, inactions, or stops did you have along the way in starting your coaching practice?
I think that if I hadn't had my life experiences pan out the way they had, I don't think I ever would have been just confident enough. I was lacking a confidence in my competence, I guess is the best way of saying it. That the only thing I've ever naturally never needed to apologize for was teaching. It just came to me like breathing. I never had to apologize. Every other aspect of my life. They're and recognize that I'm bringing worth, even if others don't see it. And the other thing I realized is I like to be needed, but sometimes you don't know who needs you, and you don't know what they're picking up from what you're offering. So I've gotten very comfortable with living in the gray in terms of the same with teaching. You might be teaching a lesson on main idea, but the message that the kids are getting is that you're a safe space for them to talk. I'm not in charge of how other people interpret me. I'm only in charge of what I put out. And that was a huge shift, and really allowed me to feel comfortable experimenting with the coaching and with reaching out to new audiences and wanting to help people move forward. It's that it's not always going to be pretty, but that's okay. Life isn't always pretty.
And so you're living that experience and showing it for the people that you're working with, sometimes living in that uncomfortable place. And it's okay to live in that uncomfortable place. And what I also heard you say was that, that attachment of what it's going to look like when it gets to the other side. I mean, that's something I had to work through as a teacher as well, that we have this idea of how we want it to look. And but oftentimes what happens is that I used to say it was like putting a painting on the wall. Like I would create this great lesson and put it on the wall, but I wouldn't have any control over whether or not the kids were going to look at it or whether they were going to enjoy it. But I knew that painting was always going to be there, and they could return to it later on in life when they were ready for it, when that thought process, that idea was going to really resonate with them. And so what I'm hearing with you in your leadership work is like letting go of outcomes, letting go of attachment, and trusting that what you put out to people, they're going to take what it is that they need and what is available to them in that moment.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes the simple act, I was talking with someone last night, sometimes it's just they need an ear, that people need an unfocused amount of time with someone who's actually actively listening to them. That it's the same, when I'm venting to my husband and he wants to fix things, the act of the venting is the action that I need, the letting off the steam. I'm a verbal processor, so that's how I process. And we have very different communication styles, and the coaching has helped me, even in my own interpersonal relationships, be more defined and be able to release conflict because we know where we're coming from. So that's been a big thing too.
So the coaching process then, in allowing somebody to vent, like that might be something that somebody just needs to learn about themselves. That through the coaching, they're learning about who they are, who they need to be, what it is they need. And then they can build that process, those skills, that experience into the next steps for themselves.
Yeah. And the holding of the space for the person to be able to talk some things out. A lot of times they'll come to their own connections. I mean, I've had it happen to me in coaching. Someone asked me a question and I connect dots that I had no idea were connected. Yeah. Because I've never had someone hold that space for me and just let me explore my own thoughts. And that's really the gift that coaching gives a lot of my clients, is I'm holding space and letting them explore.
That's a powerful place.
It is. It can be. And just when I think that, man, they're not getting anything out of this, they always turn a corner or have an insight, or just, I'm always amazed when I ask clients at the end of a session, what's your biggest takeaway, what they come up with, or what resonates with them. There's never been a time when it's nothing. And that just to me is beautiful.
And what I'm hearing too is I'm getting this image in my head of two things, that for both of you, it's about like just letting go of what the outcome is going to be. And I know I said that, but I'm kind of articulating and hearing it in a different way. It's the idea of discovering something in yourself that you didn't even know existed, that was there. And coaching articulates that and gives women and people the opportunity to move into a direction or see something that didn't even know was there before.
Yes. Yes. Really, it's cool. Almost like an uncovering. For me, it's less like peeling an onion and more like unwrapping a present. That there's beauty in there. You have to have the right condition, the right question, the right timing. And it also is empowering for women to, when I ask a question, I'll pause and they'll keep talking. And then one of the greatest gifts I learned as a coach is just be quiet. They'll keep talking, and they do. Yeah. There's always more for them to say, that I feel like the longer I pause for them, the more opportunity they have to fill that space. And that I think is important in just living. And me as a coach, I very consciously do that I keep my mouth shut, because sometimes I want to like jump in or have a story, and it's not about me, it's about the client.
And that's an interesting idea there, because what I was getting when you were talking about that was like this feeling of expansiveness within a person, that I think we tend to hold ourselves very tightly. I took a class when I went to, or session when I went to Learning Forward, on women in leadership. It's a group of women teachers out in Colorado who led this group with their teachers. And what they said is that women tend to make themselves small, like the idea that we're supposed to be small, we're supposed to be petite. If you look at the way women's crossing her arms, or women will often have their hand their hand or their arm up on their face when they're talking with other people. And what the coaching does is it creates that space of feeling who we are fully in our wholeness.
Yes,
that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
And the space does that.
Absolutely.
So last question for you, Stephanie. What's next?
What's next are a bunch of exciting partnerships that I'm working on, that they're still very early stages. My website is up, and I am actively on LinkedIn and on social media looking for clients. I actually am putting in a business pitch to Anne Arundel Community College's entrepreneurial contest. I'm like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And just working on promoting, because I know, but my book is finally in fruition and exists. And I want to start bringing that to people, because I think so many of these skills can translate to teachers, that I really want professionally to bring more coaching to the leadership in my building as well, so that the leaders can start using these tools within their own departments to make professional growth for teachers just that much more exponential.
Great. Well, Stephanie, I wish you luck in all that you are doing. It sounds very exciting, and I will be following your steps very closely, and we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Stephanie.